Welcome. I am honored that you decided to spend a few minutes of your valuable time with us. Today's episode is very timely because hospital-owned outpatient wound and ulcer management provider-based departments, better known as PBDs, have been waiting since July to learn how the original Medicare fee-for-service program will pay for their services in 2026. And they were particularly waiting to see how the Medicare program will pay them for the application of cellular and/or tissue-based products for skin wounds known as CTPs. Now, during this time, I've been asked many times, tell me what is going to be the payment rate for 2026. And I always remind the PBD teams that we wouldn't know the rate until the OPPS Final Rule is released. And even though the OPPS payment system has been in place for more than 2 decades, there are many stakeholders who do not realize that the OPPS payment system is actually the end product of the OPPS Final Rule. In fact, I am often asked, what is the OPPS Final Rule? And is it the same as the OPPS fee schedule? So let us begin by reviewing the OPPS Final Rule. Now, it is a regulation that is updated every year. It usually begins in July when the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Service release it as a proposed rule, and that rule is open for public comment. Now, once the comment period closes, the staff at CMS reviews all the comments and determines if the stakeholders provided information that supports the refinements needed for the proposed rule before it becomes final. Then at the end of October or the beginning of November, the OPPS Final Rule is released to the public. The final rule usually has an implementation date of the following January 1st, and this provides the PBDs about 60 days to make any necessary refinements to their work and the revenue cycle process. Well, this year, the final rule did not happen at the end of October. It didn't happen at the beginning of November. And in fact, it didn't happen until the 3rd week of November. So we have all been anxiously awaiting for it. And when it was released, of course, it was over 1,600 pages. And there were the files for the actual rates were published with it. And those files are labeled Addendum A and Addendum B. So the fee schedule is built into the final rule as files. And as I said, there are multiple addendums in this final rule, but the two that are important to you are Addendum A and Addendum B. Now, we also know that the outpatient department is paid for their work. By the CPTs of their services and the procedures and the HCPCS codes for the products that they use. Now, there is not a rate attached to each one of those codes. Instead, that each of those codes are assigned to an ambulatory payment classification group, and that group has an amount of money attached to it. So all the products that are inside that group take the same resources in order to provide them. So when we talk about the APC group, they're very important because that is where the money is attached. So the two addendums, one addendum is Addendum A, and it is displayed according to the APC group that is in the OPPS system. And the other addendum is Addendum B, and it is displayed according to the HCPCS code. But it doesn't matter which one of those addendums you look at, you will find the exact same information. And that information that you're looking for, of course, is the code and its status indicator and what APC group it's assigned to, and then what is the national average allowable rate that is assigned to that APC group for that year. Now, everyone, that just so you know, those addendums A and B can get updated and do get updated on a quarterly basis. So we always look for them, not just for the January one, but we also look for the April one, the July one, and the October one. All right, so that's where you find the money. All right, now this particular rule, as I said, has over 1,600 pages, and I encourage you to read all of them because there's many things that are important to you. But the one thing that I thought that we would do, just like we did for the physician fee schedule, is talk about the big changes that is going in through this rule for the cellular and/or tissue-based products. Because in the rule, they announce that they are going to unpackage the skin substitutes, or CTPs, from their associated application procedure. They also discuss that they're going to eliminate the high cost and the low cost groups, and that they are going to assign a single payment rate for all the CTPs. I'll tell you a few other things in a moment that it discusses in the final rule. So let's think about why are these changes happening? They're happening because Medicare wanted to align how they pay physicians and how they pay the provider-based departments. They wanted to align them and have them paid similarly. So we know from what I told you in the episode 12 that for the physicians, they have always been paid separately for the product from its application. But in this 2026, instead of having a different rate for every single brand of CTP, they were going to have one fixed rate of $127.28 per square centimeter. And that rate is going to be geographically adjusted. Now, in the OPPS final rule, we learned, yes, they are also going to pay for the CTPs separately from the procedure, which means they have to unpackage them from the procedure, because in the past we were paid for the procedure that included the product. So CMS said, yes, we are going to unpackage it. And in fact, we are going to pay the rate very similar, but not exactly the same for the OPPS. And the rate will be $127.14 per square centimeter. So it's a 14 cents less per square centimeter than it is for the physician's fee schedule. Also, that rate would not be geographically adjusted. So the rate for the physicians is geographically adjusted. The one for the OPPS is not geographically adjusted. We also learned in the physician's fee schedule that Medicare has not separately paid for CTPs that were not sheets. But in the physician fee schedule, it said that they would pay for them if they were covered by the payer. But they said the rate of 127.28 did not apply to the non-sheet products, that the rates would be determined by each MAC. So what we were waiting to see what would happen in the provider-based department. Well, in the provider-based department, they are not going to be paid separately for the non-sheet products, at least in 2026. So there will not be any separate payment for the non-sheet products. And just like in the physician fee schedule, you cannot use the application codes of 15271 to 15278 whenever you apply the non-sheet products. So then, let's talk about the actual application. All right. For the application, if you think about it, you would really expect that the rate for the OPPS would go down for each of the application codes because CMS pulled the product out of the application code. And that's exactly what happened. In addition to that, since there is one fee for the products, there's no longer a high cost group and a low cost group. And so CMS is clearly telling you that in your charge description masters for the provider based departments, you need to remove C5271 through C5278 because those were the codes for the low cost products. Since there are no more high and low cost products, all the products you're going to report their application with 15271 to 15278. Now let's talk about the great news. The great news is that this has allowed the outpatient departments to now be able to care for larger size wounds because when the product was packaged inside the application procedure, there wasn't enough money there to allow you to get extra product. But now, since you're able to get you're paid by the square centimeter, you will be able to buy the amount of product that you need, and so therefore you can accept larger ulcers. We also had another issue that it got fixed in this final rule, and that issue happened to be for large ulcers on the feet. In the past, when we had ulcers that were 100 square centimeters or greater, they got paid the same as if they were only 25 square centimeters or less. Whereas the ulcers that were on the leg that were 100 square centimeters or greater, they got paid a lot higher allowable rate. In this new final rule, Medicare has fixed that. Thank goodness, because we've been asking for that for many, many years. And now the ulcers on the feet that are greater than 100 square centimeters will get paid at the same application rate as the ulcers on the leg that is 100 square centimeters or more, which again is a great thing for the feet for the diabetic foot ulcer because we will now be able to afford to take care of more diabetic feet in our outpatient department. So please be sure your administration knows that because many of your administrators did not allow you to buy the extra product that you might need for these larger ulcers because there was not a way to get paid for them, but now there is. So the other last thing I want to remind you is that this fee, this giving one fee for the brands of products is just for the year 2026. After 2026, the products are going to be grouped by their FDA regulatory status. And they will be grouped. There will be an APC group, which is APC 6000, and it will be for the products that came through as a PMA. There will be a group 6001, and that will be for the products that came through as a 510K. And then there will be the APC group 6002, and that will be the products that came through as a 361 HCTP. So those particular products will be grouped, and then CMS will, for next year, we will learn exactly how each of those APC groups are going to be paid based on the regulatory status. So that's how the OPPS rule, it told us the rules, and then it gives us the rates in Addendum A and B. But before we go, I want to remind you that some people have read this rule and read these rates, and they're going, oh, wow, that means we can use whatever product we want, and we're going to get paid $127.14 per square centimeter. Well, that would be true if it's covered. So you need to remember that just because there's a code and there is a published payment rate does not mean that a service, procedure, or product is covered. You still must follow the LCDs if they exist. If they don't exist, you still have to do documentation and describe the medical necessity and be sure that it's reasonable and necessary to do your work. And your documentation has to be impeccable no matter whether there is or is not an LCD. You have to be absolutely showing that you are assessing the wounds correctly, that you are providing conservative care, that if indeed that you have a plan of care for the patient, that you are measuring and keeping track of how the ulcer is progressing, and if indeed a CTP is necessary, that you describe the why. Why is it necessary, and why am I using this particular product? And of course, that you describe the entire procedure, how the patient reacted, and your plan for the future. So, just because there's a code and a payment rate does not mean that it's going to be covered. That's going to be up to you following your LCDs. Before we go, I want to respond to the fact that many of our viewers have sent me messages asking me, Kathleen, where do I find all of this information about the OPPS final rule? So, attached to this podcast, I have listed a handout for you, and this handout has the links to a fact sheet that CMS has created about the final rule. It also has a link to the entire 1,600 plus pages of the final rule, and there is a link to the various addenda. There are many addenda that are part of the final rule, but the addenda that you will be interested in is Addendum A and Addendum B. And so I hope that that handout will be helpful to you and will help you to be able to read as much or as little of the rule as you need. And you're going to find that you'll use Addendum A and Addendum B a lot. I use Addendum B because I think, like, in regards to HCPCS codes, I don't necessarily think about the APC group, but that will be up to you. And with that, I want to thank you very much for listening and giving me the opportunity to chat with you. And we will be unpacking this more in future podcasts and maybe even some webinars so that we can go into further details. But in the meantime, I'm wishing you and your family and your friends to have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you very much for listening.